Welcome to the Shamrock Sports
Talk Show with your hosts, Igor Mitic from Serbia, Europe, and Andy Vernon from Concord, New Hampshire. We are about pride, tradition, sweat, tears, victory, and determination of Boston sports. Give us a ring at 512-543-4662. Be sure to download the Try 99 TV app on any smart device and subscribe to In the Zone Sports Talk Television. The cost is $4.95. Thank you in advance for your support. Now, let's get into the Shamrock Sports Talk Show. Welcome to the Shamrock Sports Talk Show with your hosts, Igor Mitic from Serbia, Europe, and Andy Vernon from Concord, New Hampshire. We are about pride, tradition, sweat, tears, victory, and determination of Boston sports. Give us a ring at 512-543-4662. Be sure to download the Try 99 TV app on any smart device and subscribe to In the Zone Sports Talk Television. The cost is $4.95. Thank you in advance for your support.
This is Michael, and this is Shamrock Sports Show, and right now you're able to see me and my co-host, the guest for tonight, Mr. Richard Conti. After a while, Rich, thank you for joining me, and sorry for a little delay by my mistake, because I missed American and USA and my time, of course. We have okay, I hope that you can hear me at least a little. You're by audio right now. Can you hear me?
I can hear you a little bit, Igor, and I'm also getting an echo of myself. Yeah, your voice is pretty low.
Okay, so let me just tell you let me just tell my audience that we are in the Zone Sports Talk Radio. Find us at the Shamrock Sports Talk Radio Twitter. Our Shamrock Sports Talk Radio Twitter account is at Kevin05030698. Shamrock Sports Talk Show. Find us on Amazon Sports Talk Radio page. Also listen us at YouTube, Kevin Dixon's Amazon Sports Talk Radio Show, and also find us at Roku TV. Subscribe there. Thanks, Rich, for coming here again, Mr. Rich Conti. You can find Mr. Rich Conti at Twitter at Rich Conti. So he is at Rich Conti Twitter name. He is the former producer and the host of at Tech Live Podcast. For the start of the show, Rich, tell me how are you doing and what is going on with your show? Are you doing shows and you have some radio shows, if I'm familiar, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And I want to say happy St. Patrick's Day to all the Celtics fans out there. We celebrated yesterday the family down in Savannah, Georgia, which has the second largest St. Patrick's Day parade in the U.S. So that was a lot of fun. There you go. And in addition to guest spots on show like this, I do it's now called the Charleston Digital Corridor Tech Live Podcast in partnership with an organization in Charleston that promotes entrepreneurship and helps tech startup companies going. And it's a lot of fun. You know, a couple of times a month, I talk to entrepreneurs, folks in the tech community here in Charleston, which, if listeners don't know, is sort of an up-and-coming tech hub in the U.S. So you can find that show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all the usual places.
You're doing this one, Rob, and I hope that your podcast will live a long time and that you will be more successful than by every show. You will be more successful with your shows and your podcast. Again, you are very knowledgeable Celtics fan, and you were writing the text about the Celtics excellent analysis. That's why I'm calling you. Besides, you're my friend, of course, a long time friend. Andy is not with us tonight and the next show, but he will be back later from the private reasons. Um, Again, we have the trouble. Okay. I will try to mute myself while you're talking. That's the solution. So the question is, Boston Celtics are second at the Eastern Conference. They have one game ahead of 76ers, tied with 22 losses. Milwaukee is up and ahead of the Celtics. The Celtics are at the road trip that consists of Atlanta, Georgia, Houston, then Minneapolis, Portland, and Utah. They defeated Atlanta 134-125, lost from Houston 111-109, defeated Minnesota 104-102, and Portland 126-112. That means that we are 3-1 ahead of tonight's Utah Jazz game. The question is, how would you describe this road trip that is going to end in Sacramento on Tuesday night? Then we are hosting Indiana in Boston next Friday.
Yeah, I think the only word you can use to describe it is inconsistent, right? They've been really since the January or so time frame. They've really struggled to put together a long winning streak like they had earlier in the season, and they haven't, had extended stretches of dominant play like they did in the months of November and December. It was interesting. It seemed like folks got very excited when Robert Williams came back, and folks felt like, okay, we've got our preferred starting five lineup now. They were still dealing with some injuries here and there. But, Joe Mazzulla has been very liberal with the load management days, particularly for players like Al Horford. They've done a great job of maintaining health of guys like Brogdon and Smart and a couple of the other guys who had nagging injuries here and there, and they've given the rest. Whether that's been a big factor in their challenges in establishing a lot of continuity in the second half of the season so far, it's tough to say. Honestly, they look a little bit like a team that gets bored at times. They had a big win in Atlanta at the beginning of the trip. That was a game, they hadn't been playing well coming into it. They'd had a couple losses, and they came up with a big performance there. And then you felt like, okay, maybe they're righting the ship and getting things sort of back on track. And then they struggled, against very bad Houston, and then bounce back, with a good game the other night against Portland. So, it's tough to draw any long-term conclusions when, game to game, it's really hard to see what you're going to get out of them. That said, there's 11 games left in the season, including tonight's game in Utah. They've got, I wouldn't say an easy schedule the rest of the way out, but not a difficult one. They've got
a
game
against the Spurs, who are a bad team. But, honestly, they've shown they can lose to those teams, and they've shown they've got tough games Tuesday night in Sacramento, and then they've got a game with Philly and a game with Milwaukee, as part of the remaining schedule. And they've shown they can beat either of those teams. So, it's hard to know what to expect for the rest of the way, but it would be nice to follow up last night's win in Portland, which I thought was a good win. The team, they were, they didn't blow out the Blazers, but, were particularly close. Portland got it down to 6 or so points a couple of times, but they always had an answer. Tatum had a great game. Horford was tremendous with 10 assists. In addition to, I believe it was 12 or so points, a couple of big threes. So it'd be nice
to see them come back tonight and get a back-to-back on the road with Utah. Utah was a surprise of the NBA early in the season. It's still a start when most folks consider or assume that Danny Ainge was setting them up for a tank job to angle for Victor Wembanyama, who by all accounts is the next big thing for the NBA in next year's draft. And then to close the road trip out Tuesday night, they've got a game against a very good, at least offensively, Sacramento team that's been playing really well, has shown no fear. But again, it's those games the Celtics seem to get up for and play their best. And when they play their best, they can beat any team in the league, home or away. So 11 games left. They're sitting at 49 wins. There's a very outside shot at getting a 60-win season if they can close out with a 12-game winning streak here the rest of the way. And, we'll see. I think realistically, the team's going to be between 55 and 60 wins, which is a step up from last year. And considering, all of the injuries, particularly with Rob out to start the season, the turmoil we had coming into training camp, and, the installation of a brand new coach, youngest coach in the league, and Joe Mazzulla, you'd have to consider that a fairly successful regular season, but I think it'll still leave some fans, disappointed if they finish around 55 or 56 wins. So, I think at this point, everybody, including the fans, are like, let's just get the playoffs started, and that's a whole new season.
Apologize. Celtics defeated Portland 126-112. Magic number for clinching the playoff spot is 1, and I'm going to show you right now, just to remove the text so that everybody can see this. So March 18 clinch scenario. Boston clinches the playoff spot with win in Utah or Miami loss. So Boston will be in the playoffs. Unless I don't know if there is a scenario if Boston is out of the playoffs. Maybe some crazy scenario, but never mind. Those are statistical numbers. So tonight we can clinch the playoff spot. The numbers which you were talking about, Tatum 34, 12, and 4, Brown 27, 6, and 5, and 2, Horford 12, 5, and 10. That you were talking about the importance of Al Horford. Marcus Smart for general 15, 2, 6, 4. Derek White 13, and Luke Cornett from the bench 11 and 5. Luke Cornett to lead from the bench. The Celtics shooting 47% and 15 of 20 or 42 for 3. Damian Lillard, 41, 4, and 5. Simmons, 17. Watford, 10, 8, 8, 3, almost triple-double. Blazers, 48%, and Blazers shooting 14 for 38 for 3. That means that the Celtics shooted +3 from the 3-point range. And what was in the focus of the night, I already showed the picture. Damian Lillard and Jason Tatum, 34. 12 Tatum, 41, 6 Lillard shooting 52%, 40% Tatum, but it seems that Tatum won this duel despite the numbers of points going into Lillard's favor, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you look at the Celtics box score, it was kind of an almost ideal scenario, kind of what I think folks expected and what Coach Joe Mazzulla hopes to see is you got big games out of Tatum, of course, the 34 and 12. He struggled from 3 last night. He's been struggling for a while. Hopefully it's not a health issue. Brown had a good game, 27 points. And then beyond that, it was a lot of balance. You had a lot of guys, Smart had 15, Horford had 12, White had, I believe, 14. I mentioned Horford with the big game passing the ball with 10 assists. So, that's kind of what you want to see is big games from Tatum and Brown, and then nice balance, a good, 13 points off the bench by Luke Cornett, a big a big second quarter for Luke with 9 points and I think 3 or 4 rebounds. So if they, they need those contributions from a bunch of different guys. It's going to be interesting, particularly down the stretch and then into the playoffs, what the rotation shakes out to be. Teams like to generally have a more stable rotation going into the playoffs, but the Celtics throughout the year, certainly guys have missed a lot of games, and like I mentioned, there's been a bit of load management and giving guys breaks when they've had nagging injuries. But everybody healthy, they've tried to employ an approach that's been very matchup based. So you'll see a guy like Grant Williams get 20 minutes in a game, and then the next game a DNPCD. Right. And so it'll be interesting to see if Missoula sticks with that going into the playoffs, or if he settles on your traditional 8 or 9 man rotation in the playoffs.
You mentioned interesting before we move to Minnesota game a little. You mentioned the rotation. A lot of guys in post are shooting at Missoula, for example, for one night benching Grant Williams, another night for giving him 10 minutes. Then the speculations are starting. Grant Williams is leaving Boston. The same is going with Pritchard. Another night, Pritchard is playing great. The other night, Pritchard is not playing. So the articles are Pritchard is leaving Boston. So do you really think that the Boston will have 8-man rotation fit, or it will be based to the matchup that the guys Griffin, like Fusier, like Grant Williams, and Pritchard and Luke Cornett, they will get the chance based on the matchup? What do you think?
Yeah, I think assuming everybody's healthy, right? I think what we'll see is obviously your starting 5 is going to be Horford, Rob, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, and Marcus Smart. I think you're going to see a steady diet in the playoffs of Derek White and Malcolm Brogdon. Missoula, like before him, and like Brad Stevens before him, loves having 2 ball handlers on the court at the same time. And I think they've shown they play well that way. I think beyond those 7 guys, you've got 3 or 4 guys, maybe even 5, that are going to be matchup and game dependent. So you've got Grant Williams, you've got Blake Griffin, you've got Pritchard, Hauser, and maybe Cornett, right? Depending on who you run into in the playoffs, right? You'll see 1 or 2 of those guys on a nightly basis in the playoffs play a role, and so it's hard to say they don't have this rotation. Because they've got to clear top 7 guys.
Yes.
Right? And those 7 guys are starters on virtually any other team in the league. Right. And so they're solid at that point. You need more than 7 in a playoff series. You need to go 8 or 9 deep, and they've got the flexibility to make those 8 and 9 guys the right guys for a given situation.
I would say 8 guys. I think Grant Williams will be decisive factor in the playoffs, considering his fantastic playoff performances the last year. I cannot imagine the scenario. Some games maybe we will not see Grant Williams, and media and fans will whine, of course. But I cannot imagine scenario unless God help some injury that Grant Williams will not play in the playoffs, right?
I'm inclined to agree with you. And a month ago, I would have said absolutely. Recently, the hedge I'm making is a guy like Blake Griffin stood out over the past 2 or 3 weeks with his energy. And if you look at his on-off numbers, guys just seem to play really well around him. So I could see a scenario where, again, depending on the matchup, where Griffin gets minutes over Grant. But I agree with you. Ideally, you've got those 8 guys, the 7 I mentioned plus Grant, and then a wild card, for situational basketball and matchup dependent basketball.
Mm-hmm. So I didn't ask you about Mike Muscala. Do you think that he showed that he can play the ball? Now the question is about the matchups, and the question is about uh, the need for him in the team. We remember when he came. For example, he started in Milwaukee, and he played great games. Do you see the room for him in the playoffs or not, maybe? Because I think his style of playing is fitting with Boston's offensive schemes that other coaches run, in my opinion.
I mean, honestly, you could throw him in that wild card bucket at the end of the rotation. Again, I could see matchups or game situations where you really want to spread the floor, and maybe you don't want to lean on Horford too much. You bring in Muscala, and let's not forget Danilo Gallinari. By all reports are that he's starting to, work his way into practice shape, and we may see him in the playoffs. And he brings a lot of similar skill set to Muscala.
Absolutely. I forgot about that. Thanks for. He said that he's almost ready. Do you think that he will have enough time to prepare for the playoffs? I mean, technically, 1 month, 11 games to play a little to prepare for the playoffs. Do you see him playing a couple of minutes in the playoffs, maybe, or maybe he's targeting the next season more likely?
Unless he has a setback, I think he's going to make that 15-man playoff roster. If he's working his way into the practice shape now, then he could potentially be ready in a second round matchup.
Mm-hmm.
What's that 15th roster spot going to cost you? Like who are you going to
Mm-hmm.
JD Davidson or somebody who doesn't make it to like. I think you put him out there. Or I think you put him on the roster in the hopes that he's ready and that he can win a game for you somewhere along the line.
Absolutely. I mean, the next season, he is one hell of offensive weapon, and against the teams like Milwaukee, uh, he made really good things. They
Yep.
loaded the team. Middleton is back, and you see the effect of them straight teams, their team. They got Dragic, they got who else? Straight teams, the wings, Jay Crowder. So I mean, I think that definitely you can never have enough wins for Milwaukee, and I mean, he is ahead of when he's healthy. He is ahead of Sam Cassier, I mean, Blake Griffin, maybe even Grant Williams, But only question for me is his health and physical condition for the playoffs. But definitely I'm in for you about him, Danilo Gallinari, making the 15th spot because that would be really smart thing to do, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think he's going to be healthy enough this year that he would push a Grant Williams. And even push comes to shove, I'm not sure, like if they need shooting, that they would go to him over Hauser. But what he brings you is size with shooting. Remember, he's a good 3 inches bigger than Hauser. So I can see him playing a role. And I think you mentioned Milwaukee. That's a good matchup for him.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what else? Blake Griffin. Blake Griffin is a cohesive factor, it seems. Everybody is mentioning him as locker room leader, the guy that is stabilizing our locker room. So he will be playing definitely. Couple of minutes, 15 minutes, like against Minnesota, or 20 minutes, or some days when you Rob Williams is not there, maybe even starting. you know.
Mhm.
He was starting for Boston Celtics. I'm seeing Blake Griffin ahead of Cornet, to tell you the truth, you know. About Grant Williams, I don't know, depends on the matchup. And when Danilo Gallinari returns, and if he returns to the playoff spot, then those matchups at the wing positions, uh, uh, that battle is really becoming interesting in the playoffs, right? From the bench, especially.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
absolutely. And the
Cornette,
only
the
place I
only
could see
place
him
I
have
could
a
see him
role
have a
is
role is
if you're running
if
into
you're
an
running into an
Embiid
Embiid
or running
or running
into
into
Jokic,
Jokic
somewhere
or
you just
somewhere
need the
you just
length,
need the length,
right?
right?
Because Grant can give you
Grant
the
can give you
strength
the
to push
strength to
against the
push
big
against the big
guy,
guy,
and
and
Griffin can play
Griffin can
against
play
some
against some
centers.
centers.
But with
But
one
with
of those big
one of those
aircraft
big
carriers
aircraft
in
carriers in
there, I think you
there, I
might
think
see
you
them
might
go
see
to
them
some
go to some
minutes with
minutes
Cornet.
with Fournette.
Yeah. I mean, what else? Takeaways from Boston Portland, from Celtics blog and Keith Smith. Business like win, Horford rolling, Tatum scoring without threes. Then Brown, good, smart, the playmaker, the green connect, right again, white connector, and Blake making plays. You mentioned this. Now let's talk a little about Minnesota. Takeaways from Minnesota. Green did it out. Brown carried his way. Ball and players movement, attacking the mismatches. Tatum finding ways to score. Rotation switch and Grant made Grant plays. What are your impressions about Minnesota? Win, good
That
win.
was
So
a surprisingly fun game. Like, it wasn't an artistic success. Well, you mentioned grinding it out, or the Celtics blog mentioned
grinding it out.
grinding it
And it was
out,
a
and
very
it was a
physical
very
game. I
physical
mean,
game. I
that's
mean, that's
Minnesota's
Minnesota's
game,
game,
right?
right?
And
And
that's a good
that's a
team. I
good
think
team. I
they've
think they've
underperformed quite a
underperformed
bit
quite a
this
bit this
year.
year, but
Gobert, of course,
Gobert, of
came
course,
over in
came
the
over in
big
the big
trade.
trade.
Sort of been a little
Sort of
bit
been
of
a
a
little bit of a
disappointment.
disappointment.
Carl
Carl
Anthony
Anthony
Towns up and
Towns, up and
down. They had
down.
the
They had
the
the
trade with
trade with
the
the
Lakers
Lakers
at
in
the
the
trade
trade
deadline,
deadline,
sending away
sending away
D'Angelo
D'Angelo
Russell. But
Russell. But
with
with
Conley now, a
Conley
steady
now a
point
steady point
guard,
guard,
and
and
Anthony
Anthony
Edwards, who's one of the
Edwards,
up and
who's one of
coming
the up and
stars
coming
in the
stars in
league,
the league,
and
and Gobert's
Gobert's presence on
presence on
defense,
defense, that's a
tough
physical, tough
team. And so that was
team,
a
and so that was a
nice,
nice,
hard fought,
hard fought,
grinded out, like
grinded out,
Celtic
like
Blog
Celtic
said,
Blog said,
win. And it
win,
was a
and it
crazy
was a
last
crazy
minute or
last minute
so,
or so
too.
too.
But
But
we've kind of kept
it
us
kind
on
of
our
kept us on
seats.
our
But that
seats.
that
But
was a
that
nice
was a
win.
nice win.
I think that at the end of this year, for me, objective number one is to keep the number two spot. You know, it's not like we cannot win on the road. We can, but I would like if we meet with Philadelphia, and we will meet potentially um,
Mhm.
in the semifinals, conference semifinals. If we meet with Philadelphia, I really would like to Boston to have the home first advantage. We are tied with 22 losses. We are one game ahead, but two games more than Philadelphia. That's why it is important to win all the rest of the games, like you mentioned, or majority of the games to keep the number two spot, and it will be a successful season, in my opinion. What do you say?
I agree.
I'd like to see him
I'd
get
like to
that
see him
top
get that top
spot.
spot.
I think it would be
I
a
think it would be a
reward for coming
reward for
into a
coming into a
season that seemed
season
like
that
it
seemed
might
like it
be a
might be a
season of
season of
uncertainty,
uncertainty,
and coming
and
really,
coming really,
strong out of the
strong out
gate.
of the
So it would be good
gate.
to
So
see
it would be
them
good to
finish
see them finish
strong and
strong
get
and get
rewarded.
rewarded.
I mean,
I mean,
Milwaukee and
Milwaukee and Philadelphia both have reasonably
difficult
difficult
schedule
schedule
the rest of the way
the rest of the
out.
way out.
So
So
I honestly have
I
a
honestly
hard
have a
time
hard
seeing
time
either
seeing
of them
either
get
of
more
them
than
get more than
56
56
wins.
wins.
So that would
So
mean,
that would mean,
going
going
what, seven and
seven and
four or 8-4 the
four
rest of the way
and
for the
four the rest of the
Celtics to
way for the Celtics
finish in first,
to
and
finish
that's
in first,
sorry,
and
eight and
that's
three.
sorry 8-3.
So and then
So
that's
then that's
it's
it's
achievable.
that's achievable. But at the same time, I don't like
playing the game
of like trying to pick your matchup in the playoffs, particularly in the first round.
But at the same time,
I'm not sure I would rather play Cleveland than Philly. Cleveland's given the Celtics some trouble this season. That's a long, physical team with some firepower with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell.
I think that's
a dangerous team in the playoffs.
I totally agree. Returning to Minnesota, really quick. Celtics win 104-102. Brown 35 and 10, player of the game. Tatum 22 and 12, double. Brogdon 12 and 6, 4 for 11, 3 and 5. Smart 9, 2, 5. White 9, 3, 4. Celtics shooting 41%. Timberwolves and 12 threes. Minnesota Edwards 28, 10 and 7. Upcoming star, like you said. Anderson 15, 7, 8. Gobert 15, 7 and 8. Gobert 15, 6. Reed 15 and 6. McDaniels 14 and 5. Bulls 44%. Better shooting percentage than the Celtics, and 12, 36 equal with the three. What else we should mention? What about that loss in Houston? I mean, we would be in better spot if we won in Houston, but it happens, right?
Yeah, that one was a little bit of a gut punch.
It's not surprising. The Celtics, we've seen them play down to opponents like Orlando,
particularly these young teams
who,
if they come at you,
if you're not playing your best, and they're not gonna just back down. And so if you're playing inconsistently or not shooting well,
you're vulnerable.
And I think that was the case.
It's interesting.
The beginning of the season, the Celtics were so hot
from three-point
land.
That was the story.
Of this, the first month or two of the season, not just for the Celtics, for the NBA.
Right. It was
historic. Their offensive efficiency at that point.
And so as
tough as it's been to watch when they've been inconsistent. In some ways, there's a silver lining
of them being
forced to try to learn how to win games.
Particularly on
the road when they're not.
And they failed to do that against Houston the other night. They did it in Atlanta. They did it in Minnesota, and they, I don't think they shot particularly well in last night's game. So they've done that a couple of times, and it's. As a fan, it's a little ugly, but at the same time, the playoffs, you can't count on shooting, 45% for three, through a whole series and ride that to win. You've got to, buckle down. And hey, this team made its signature last year was defense. Right? They were playing defense at a historic level the second half of the season last year, and they really haven't gotten back to that this year. They've had some flashes and some stretches. But that's the thing I'd like to see over the last 10 or 11 games is the defense really start to tighten up and lock in like they were last year. And it's been a variety of factors this year, but more than anything, I think it's been, a lack of focus on that end of the court. So hopefully that's a switch they can turn on. But yeah, I mean, games like that Houston game just sort of make you a little bit anxious for the playoffs and wanting it to start because they were just going through the motions, and Houston took advantage of it.
Absolutely. About the Houston game, I will mention Jabari Smith Jr., 24 points, 11 rebounds, 5 3-point made. What else? Power rankings are not important at the moment. I heard interesting statement from Paul Pierce. He said, if the Denver Nuggets see the Lakers or Golden State Warriors, they are going to get pooped in the first round. Agree or disagree? Nuggets lost the other night, if I'm correct. Nikola Jokic MVP candidate. So, do you believe in Denver Nuggets for the West or not?
Yes, I mean, as a team that's a number one seed and has earned it through the season by playing well and being sort of the class of their conference. You don't want to run into a veteran team with players who, have had success in the playoffs, like the Lakers with LeBron and Davis, and of course the Warriors with Steph and Draymond and that team. That's your nightmare matchup, right? Because you're in a no-win situation. If you win, you were the number one seed and they barely made the playoffs, so of course you were supposed to win. But if you lose, you go down in history as, one of the teams that choked and blew it. So anything's possible. I think there's a chance, certainly a Golden State or a Lakers team could knock off, if they were fully healthy, could knock off the Nuggets in the first round. I don't think it's likely. I think, I love the truth and he's refreshing when he's out there in front of the camera talking. But I think just another example of people not wanting to give this Denver team, and particularly Jokic, credit. There's been a little bit of a backlash with Jokic winning back-to-back MVPs and being a strong candidate for his third straight, which, he would be the first guy in quite a while, I think probably going back to the 90s to do that. And folks feeling like he's not deserving for whatever reason. Honestly, some of it is him being a non-US based player. You hate to see that, but I think that plays a part in it. But that's a good team, and honestly, Jokic deserves all of the MVP consideration that he's gotten with his play. He lifts everybody around him, and that's what you want to see. They're certainly not they've certainly got a good team around him, but they're not a star-studded team by any stretch of the imagination. You've got a lot of good players that complement Jokic, and Jamal Murray and Aaron Gordon and Michael Porter Jr. and folks like that. But there's certainly beyond Jokic not another top 20 NBA talent out there with them. And he's led them to what'll probably be a 55, 54 win season again, and first place in the conference. And he deserves credit for that. He makes everybody around him better in a way that few players in history really have. You see, honestly, folks love to talk about make comparisons between Luka Doncic and Bird, and certainly with the shooting and the passing, there's some there. But I've always said I think Jokic is a better comp for Bird. I think people undersell how big Larry actually was back in the day and what a dominant rebounder he was. And you watch Jokic play, and he's got some of that same vision and some of the just ability to make the game completely slow down to his speed, right? And while Doncic again has great visions, a great shooter, he's more of a guard than Larry ever was. I mean, Larry was a legit big at 6'10", and folks forget that early in his career he was playing next to Parrish, and before that Rick Roby as the power forward in those lineups. Of course, McHale came along and his career took off, and Larry sort of made a huge front line with him and Parrish and McHale. But yeah, Jokic has a lot of those same qualities that Bird did. Certainly not to the same level, but not too far behind.
Not too far behind. I think we have to start talking about him as a
top 25 player.
Top 25 player all time.
Absolutely. I don't know about Jokic, why people refuse to give him credit. I think that Shaq or somebody else called out Jokic as well, and the people from media. Never mind, he's the candidate to be MVP again alongside Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo. And speaking of people underrating players that are top three candidates from MVP odds, listen one comment under NBA on ESPN picture that is showing odds for MVP odds movement last 3 days, in which Jokic is minus 105, Embiid minus 105, Giannis plus 300. So one comment is saying, I'm tired of Giannis. He's overrated. He's but he's playing in the league 12 to 15 years. He's not a skilled player. He doesn't possess a mid-range game with his liability from the free throw line and 3-point line. I mean, when you're listening to this, you think that he's talking about the guy that is playing in some Greek second league or the third league, not former MVP of the finals and former MVP of the league, right? I mean, I don't know how today's fans are rating the players, and this is a subject for another show, you know. But I think that the problem is that today's fans are not educated enough. To tell you to tell you the truth, and not offense to the not to I don't mean to offend the fans. I'm not targeting at you, but especially the younger fans, you know. But never mind which team you are supporting, the Celtics. But to say that Giannis is overrating, not respect Jokic and good players, I don't understand that here, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah, I
agree.
agree.
I think some of
I
it
think some of it
is
is
there is so
there is
much
so much
talk
talk
outside the game,
outside the game, starting
back with the
back with
draft,
the draft,
right? The
right?
game has
The game has
become,
become,
or
or perception of the game,
being a
or
fan of the
being a fan
game
of the
has
game
been more
has been
about
more about
potential
potential
performance
performance.
a while,
While,
right? And
right?
so
And
you
so
look at a
you
guy
look at a
like
guy like
Embiid and
Embiid and
see
see
just
just
the
the
skill
skill
and the
and the
agility and something
agility
that
and
is 7
something that
foot.
is 7 foot.
You
You know, you
think about the
think about the
possibilities,
possibilities,
right? You
right?
start
You
thinking,
start
wow,
thinking, wow, well,
this is another
this is
Will
another Will
Chamberlain,
Chamberlain,
and
and you know,
that's an
that's
exciting
an exciting
thing to see and
thing to
talk
see and
about.
talk about.
But
But
what gets
what gets
lost, a lot of
lost, a
it
lot of it
is the
is the
downsides of the
downsides of the
performance.
performance.
Similar with
Similar with
Giannis.
Giannis.
Giannis
Giannis
can be
can be
tremendously
tremendously
dominant,
dominant,
playing a style
playing
of
a style
play
of
that
play that
very few
very few
players can
players can
physically pull
physically
off.
pull off.
And the
And the
possibilities of that
possibilities
get
of that
really
get really
exciting.
exciting.
And
And they
they
do
do have
have
a
a
high
high
level of
level of
performance, but I
performance,
think
but I
folks
think
want to
folks
give
want to
them that
give them
level
that, well,
because they
because
feel
they
like
feel like
there's
there's
another
another
level they
level
can
they
hit,
can hit,
and they
and
want
they
to
want to,
almost
they want to
like
almost like
live in a
live
world
in a
where they
world
reach
where
that
they've
level,
reached that level,
Yeah,
and
and
they kind of have
they
to
kind of
earn
have
it.
to earn it.
like
I mean,
I mean,
Embiid's
Embiid's
been
been
a
a
disappointment in the
disappointment in the
playoffs,
playoffs,
and
and
you also have to
you also
look
have to
at,
look at, particularly with the MVP race,
his games
is
played,
games played,
mm-hmm.
and
and
both
both
Embiid
Embiid
and
and
Giannis have
Giannis have
missed a fair
missed a
number
fair
of their
number of
team's
their team's
games,
games,
certainly
certainly
more
more
than
than
Jokic, and
Jokic, and
Jokic deserves
Jokic
credit for
deserves
that.
credit for that.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I watched Jokic in Adriatic League, and again, if you told me then that Jokic will be MVP of NBA League, I would tell you that you're crazy because he was really uh, skinny, um, with height, but not enough mass. His defense was reliability. His offense was fantastic, even then, and the rebounding and passing. He's the old school Yugoslavian of passing. You see, like point center, that's like Vlade Divac style, a point center. But in Denver, he get weight and I mean, he learned how to play on the high level, and I mean, uh, here he is. I would not be surprised 1% if Denver came out of the West. They have been top of the West majority of the season. Returning to our Eastern Conference because we are more concerned about our Celtics than the West. About the West, it is Wild West. Uh, a quick question. What do you think about Suns' so-called super team with Durant, Chris Paul, and Devon Booker? Do you believe that they will win the Western Conference or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can they be
Can they be
healthy?
healthy?
I
Right.
don't think so.
I
I think
think
that's
that's
a
a huge
huge
question.
question.
Yeah.
Paul's,
Paul's, where he's what,
39
39
now,
now,
and
and
he has
he has
trouble
trouble
going more
going,
than 20
more than
game
20 game
stretch
stretch
without
without
getting banged
getting
up
banged up Durant, I mean, honestly, the past 3 years, I don't know what to make of him. Like, are the miles catching up with him? And so he's prone to be all of these injuries. Like the latest one, he slipped in warm-up line. Or is it just bad luck? Or is the guy just lost his desire to play and compete? I don't know.
Absolutely. Because he has won MVPs and the titles. Okay, about the Eastern Conference, you mentioned Cleveland. I think Cleveland is the most pleasant surprise of the Eastern Conference, and Milwaukee and Philly will be tough matchups. Milwaukee tougher than Philadelphia. Somehow, I think that we possess Philadelphia 76ers numbers. They are dangerous. They are not easy team. But I think that it will be easier for us to play Philly and Cleveland so that he can really give us the trouble. So playoff will be really interesting at the Eastern Conference, right? Tonight, the last question. Tonight's game, here it is, Utah Jazz. So our friend Danny and Laurie Markkanen and the other Utah stars. So maybe the most pleasant surprise of the Western Conference. I was talking about the importance to get the win. It's not important how do you get the win, but it's important to get the win. Just like in Minnesota, 2 points win, 1 point win, I will take it because we do not want to be number 3 Eastern Conference after this game, right?
Yeah, and they're missing a lot of guys tonight. Marcus isn't playing, Horford isn't playing, and of course Rob is still out, Pritchard is still out, and of course Gallinari. So
they're going to be short-handed. That's going to put a huge premium on Brogdon coming back and playing well. It's going to put a huge premium on Tatum and Brown having good games, and then somebody else, whether it's a Grant or Blake Griffin, stepping up on the front line with both Horford and Williams out. So it'll be an interesting game. It's a second night back-to-back on the road. Those are generally difficult, but the Celtics have been pretty good in that situation the past couple of years. And these are the games sometimes where they're missing a lot of guys that they actually seem to be better able to focus. Like they know they're shorthanded and the guys come in and know they have a job to do and they're a little bit more focused and less sort of like I'll let the other guy do it tonight. So hopefully that dynamic plays out tonight. But it would be nice to get that win, head into Sacramento with a little bit of a momentum going, and I think they'll be up for the Sacramento game Tuesday night for sure.
Rich, thank you for coming here. Apologize for lateness and little difficulties, but it's always great to speak with you. Can you tell me for the end where is your next show and what are you working on for?
Great. Yeah. And always great to talk with you, Igor. Folks can look for the Charleston Digital Corridor Tech Life podcast with Rich Conti. Again, Apple Podcasts, Android Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much you name it. And, if you're interested in all in the tech industry and entrepreneurship, even though it focuses on Charleston, it tells a lot of exciting stories. I had an interview, a podcast episode came out about 2 or 3 weeks ago with a research scientist with the VA Medical Center based here in Charleston, who's on the verge of an enormous breakthrough with regard to Alzheimer's disease. And so just a lot of interesting stories, and I hope you'll check it out and let me know what you think.
Rich, really, we will talk soon when the playoff comes. The next week, Andy is not with me. I will see maybe with Kevin, maybe with somebody else. But stay with us. Follow Boston Celtics. Go Boston Celtics in Utah, of course. And subscribe to Anderson Sports Talk Radio. Thanks for following us. Rich, all the best of luck. And we will root for Boston Celtics to get the win in Utah, right?
Let's do it.
Okay, the show is over, and see you the next week at 7 p.m. Eastern. Thank you all, guys. Thanks, Rich Conti again. I'm Igor Mitic, your host.
Let's get it. Thank you for listening to the Shamrock Sports Talk Show, We're here every Saturday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are the best 4-leaf lucky show in the area. This show comes to you by way of the In the Zone Sports Talk Show Network, LLC. And be sure to download the Try99 TV app on any smart device and subscribe to In the Zone Sports Talk Television. The cost is $4.95. Thank you in advance for your support. Thank you for listening to the Shamrock Sports Talk Show. We're here every Saturday from 7 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are the best 4-leaf lucky show in the area. This show comes to you by way of the In the Zone Sports Talk Show Network, LLC. And be sure to download the Try99 TV app on any smart device and subscribe to In the Zone Sports Talk Television. The cost is $4.95. Thank you in advance for your support.